Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today we're going to continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and we are back with more Nintendo 64 work in progress core fun, because overnight Robert added in the implementation for other saving formats such as controller packs. That means that now every single game on MiSTer FPGA for Nintendo 64 can save. The implementation may change in the future, but the good news is if you really want to play Quest 64 and come back and save your game and then play later, you 100% can. And this takes a lot of games into the quote-unquote playable category, because before you could get into them and play them, but you couldn't get back to your current save no matter what you tried, which meant that for any game that had any sort of distance in it, you were starting over again from scratch. But you'll see here in Quest 64, and I did use this example because the community loves this game, once we reinitialize the controller pack, get it back into the system and reset, you can see that we can now go into load the game, and the game that was just saved is right here waiting for us. That's going to allow so many more people to test further into games, look for bugs, and see what games are completable, because as much as people seem to love Quest 64, I can't imagine anyone's going to sit down and play it from start to finish. Now on the user request side, Pokemon Stadium is one that you've been wanting to see a ton of, and I do have some footage of it here as well, and again it's another game that just 100% seems to be working, at least through the capture that I have here, and thanks Andy D again for helping me out this week. It's been very busy with Sega Saturn yesterday, but you will see we can get into Pokemon Stadium and it looks and plays exactly as you would expect outside of the anti-aliasing and the blur filter, and this is a game I think looks perfect right now. I don't need any new effects, I don't need any filters over them. Of course I'm happy we're getting them, and I know a lot of people will enjoy that, but for me this is a great clean look, and Squirtle here spinning around like a blue shell in Mario Kart. This game was a ton of fun back in the day. You know, I never loved Pokemon as a kid, and still as an adult I barely play them, but for some reason this game 100% just enthralled me when it was back on the Nintendo 64 in the 90s, so seeing it here again is a ton of fun. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite Pokemon game is, because I really haven't played any recent ones, so if there's one out there that I should check out, definitely tell me, because it's one of those things I kind of just fell out of the franchise and I don't know which game I should start with. You know, if you listen to my nephew, he's got about a list of 12 I should check out. But just seeing this draw on screen again, all of the models look accurate, all of the text and menu is here. Last time we talked about this game, the menus were absolutely just not working correctly. You were getting double and triple images in some spots. But now again, everything just looks like it should, and that is such a vast improvement, because the last time we talked about this game was probably only like 12 days ago. The last time we talked about Nintendo 64 was 48 hours ago, and we didn't have controller pack support for saving within the core. So it's one of those things, this core continues to move at breakneck pace, and I don't think I'm ever going to get a break of making Nintendo 64 videos. But in all honesty, I love doing it, so what can I really complain about? And you will see, with different formats for saving, we can continue our game and get right back into it as well. But if you have a request for the next video, leave it down below, tell me what you want to see, and I will do that. Now, stepping back into Ocarina of Time, and I will be showing more footage of this in a later video, I plan on getting deeper into the game, but since we last covered it, there's been a lot of improvements in the graphics side, in Hyrule Field, and other areas of the game. And honestly, the last time we showed this game, only like 12 days ago, it had the tendency to freeze and do some strange things. Now it just seems to be 100% working as well, outside of the dithering, the anti-aliasing, and the texture filters. And honestly, I think I would enable dithering, but I think I leave everything else off. But leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've changed your mind on team filtering versus team raw pixels. But as we run around and Hyrule turns from day to night, I just love this image. It's got such a great color to it, with this pseudo lens flare as the sun drops down below the horizon line and the enemies come out at night. Just seeing this again is so wild. It was only like 6 weeks ago where the Nintendo 64 core barely played anything. Now we have all of these iconic games playing, and every single one of them that allows for saves able to save on the current core, which means you can play a game and save it and come back to it anytime you want. So long as it doesn't freeze, you can just keep playing. But there's definitely been some sound improvements as well. Ocarina of Time sounds so much better this round, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, and I'll be right back. Okay, I lied, that was more like 30 seconds, but it's not like you're paying me, so you're due no refunds. Now, another game that pretty much everyone has been requesting, and I did have a capture of, but I heard there was improvements coming, so I did wait, is Bangai-O on the Nintendo 64. It's also on the Dreamcast and the Nintendo DS, but we're talking about the 64 version today. If you've never played this game before, it is such a wild time. It's an intense single player experience running around basically like playing a shmup, but in an open world environment. The screen is not scrolling vertical or horizontal at any cadence outside of the movement of your character. And like I said, I did have this working before, but there was heavy graphical corruption in both the player character sprite as well as the special bar and your overall health bar. That has 100% been improved here. Now, it is one of those things, you'll see what happens after we get through the first level when we get there, but what you're seeing right now is so close to working perfectly. You will notice that some of the terrain, some of the buildings, some of the enemies will start popping in and out of existence rapidly. It's nothing that's like a strobing effect, so don't worry, it's just a little bit of a graphical glitch, and there was one right there. Sometimes it seems like the 2D elements just clip out of existence and then pop back in later on, so it's one of those things. This game is not perfect yet, but it's 100% playable up until a certain point, and I will show you what that point is. But if you've never played this game before, definitely check it out. It's such a fun experience, but I feel like most people will have played this game because it is one of the #1 requests that I get on this series. And again, leave your request down below for the next video. But it's such a blast to play this here, and this was the first way I played the game back in the day. Now usually I go to the Dreamcast version, but if I want to play on Nintendo 64 with the current core, it's getting more possible. Definitely check this out. It's a fun experience to have, but you're going to see here as soon as the match ends and it starts to show the cutscene for the next level, it's going to animate for a little bit and then it's going to freeze right here. So right now you can play the first level of the game, and this is what the graphics looked like on the previous core. Just a little bit of a issue there, but honestly, play the first level, get excited for what's coming next. It's such a fun game, and I can't wait to see how it plays on the next core. Now, another game that's seen big improvements since the last time we talked about it is Ridge Racer 64. When we first saw this game, it was running, but there were a lot of graphics just straight up missing on both the environment as well as the road itself. There would be buildings just basically with no textures, and a whole chunk of the road would just go to straight black. Also, the intro had some glitches, and I never think I really showed it last time, but you'll see here, Ridge Racer 64, the intro looks absolutely spectacular. Not as good as the PlayStation 1 because it can't use that FMV, but it does exist. And now you will see that the entire road and all of the graphics are here. The way it draws shadows does look like maybe the road's missing, but definitely take a close look at it and turn up your screen's brightness if you can't see it, because it is there and you can see the road lines inside of it. This is another game that is just vastly improved. Last time I would mark it as playable. You could finish a race, but there were so many graphical elements missing. It wasn't something that was going to be replacing real hardware or a real cartridge. Now, at least in the amount that I have seen and experienced, I would say you can 100% turn your MiSTer on and play Ridge Racer 64 on the current core versus taking your console controller and cartridge out. And the great thing is, last time I saw this game as well in the videos and showed it to you guys, the audio was definitely popping and kind of whistling a little bit. It was not a perfect sounding experience, but now in the current core it sounds so much better. So go ahead and listen for like 35 seconds. I'll come back because I still got more games to show. Sounds accurate to my ear, and it's a good soundtrack for the Nintendo 64, although I would say, compared to the PlayStation versions, the soundtrack in this does suffer, not because it didn't try, but because the PlayStation had the advantage of Redbook audio and a CD. Now, moving over to a different version of Mario Kart 64, people have been asking for more fan hacks and ROM mods, so I'm showing you one right now, and unfortunately the person that sent me this capture, I lost the piece of paper that I wrote your name down on. Leave me a comment down below and I will pin it to make sure you get credit. But if you guys want to see more of these things, the fan-made games on Nintendo 64, leave me a comment down below, because I am not very well versed in all of what the fan community is doing with the system. I've played a few of these things, but I know there's absolutely hundreds out there, so if there's one in particular you want to see, don't expect me to know what it is, because this is a smaller community and I can't keep track of all of them. But it's so much fun to see these other experiences start to play on MiSTer as well. If you're tired of the bone stock Mario Kart 64, you have different versions you can play around with, and that is an absolute ton of fun to be had, and I can't wait to see what comes up in the future that does run on the core, because I know pretty much every single month a new mod comes out for a super popular game and everyone gets to enjoy it and love it, and now you'll be able to do so, hopefully for the most part, on MiSTer FPGA moving forward. And I know everyone would yell at me if I didn't talk about the improvements in Quest 64. It used to be that all of the techs had these pink boxes around them. That has been 100% fixed with new improvements to the RDP or reality display processor. So now Quest 64 plays and looks exactly as you would expect it to, outside of the anti-aliasing and dithering and different blur filters that would be applied. And I mean, the story is here, it's a decent story. I know I give Quest 64 crap, it's not a bad game, it's just one of those Discord jokes where people say it's the best game ever and we argue back and forth in a really fun manner. But don't ever think I'm making fun of games on the channel, I'm not, I'm just telling you what I think is good and what isn't. But it's so much fun to see these evolutions come forward, especially in the battle mode here. It used to just be a big sea of pink blocks. Now all of the text and all of the bounding boxes around them just 100% look like they should. And that's the great part. Even though so many games have come alive, we're getting into the point now where the list of games that isn't working isn't huge. We do still get these iterative changes every time a new core comes out, so we can show you the process of how it evolves. And I will say the Quest soundtrack, not too bad, and it does sound great. Go ahead and listen for 35 seconds and I'll come back with a little more Brian. Brian's got a pretty good sounding game, and I do think it's hilarious that they picked the name Brian for the protagonist. They didn't go with anything fantasy sounding, but I would have watered it down even more and just called him Bob. So from now on, I'm calling him Bob in these videos, and there's nothing you can do about it. But Pokemon Stadium is probably the main takeaway from this video, because I haven't really showed it much yet. It's working, it's a great game, it's so much fun, and it took all of my energy not to call it Pokemon Coliseum the entire video. There's so many different Pokemon games, it's so close of titles. I did have to re-record a few times because I kept calling this game the wrong thing even though I know what it was. But if you want to play today, you can play all of these games, you can save them, and outside of Bangai-O freezing after the first level, there were no freezes in any of these captures whatsoever. That's not to say that there wouldn't be one 5 minutes after the footage stops, it just means that they weren't encountered in these tests. But don't try to get 20 hours into a game with save files and then come yell at me because it froze. It's sad, but every once in a while a couple people actually do that, and honestly, this is not done yet, just keep that in mind. But it is so much fun to see this evolution. We now have so many games working with graphical improvements, and now every single save format for the Nintendo 64 is supported. And before you ask about stuff like GoldenEye or Perfect Dark, the implementations for the virtual memory for those to come alive is not yet included, but trust me, the minute that happens, you'll be seeing a video about it here. For that, thanks so much for watching, guys. Leave your requests down below, and we'll see what happens with this core throughout the week. Short of that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.